Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Welcome to another episode of Haqiqatjou, where we discuss religion and politics, the two least controversial subjects. As always, I am your host, Daniel Haqiqatjou, and we have very interesting developments to talk about today. A variety of topics that I think you'll find quite informative and interesting, inshallah. Shout out to everyone in the chat. As always, I'm looking at the chat. I see some of our regulars there. I also will respond to super chats throughout the show, inshallah. As always, I want to remind you to subscribe to our newsletter. The newsletter is very important. Why? Because this is the one avenue that really can't be banned. In the sense that YouTube can deplatform us, Twitter could someday deplatform us, Facebook can deplatform us, Instagram already deplatformed me a long time ago. So, but the newsletter is something that really can't be deplatformed. When we have your email, we can contact you, inshallah, and let you know where you can find our content, where you can find our episodes and analysis. So definitely subscribe to the newsletter. You'll find the link in the description below. So what I want to talk about today, in summary, is what is going on in the Middle East, of course. You had a strike, a multi-wave strike that Israel conducted against Iran as quote-unquote retaliation for the October strike earlier in the month, at the beginning of the month, when Iran launched many ballistic missiles, about 100 to 200 ballistic missiles, some of them hypersonic, hyper-maneuverable ballistic missiles, new technology unveiled by Iran against Israel. And this was the long-awaited retaliation that happened just last night. And we want to talk about what this retaliation means, what was the extent of the damage, what does it mean for the wider region. And a lot of people are confused. A lot of people are questioning, like, what is going on here? Israel was beating its chest and claiming that there is going to be a strike like no other. Gallant, the head general of the IDF, was saying this is going to, or the defense minister rather, was saying that this is going to really shock and awe the retaliation against Iran. And we didn't see that. We didn't see that. So what is going on? We want to talk about that. But then I want to get to the real analysis portion of the show, where I want to look at why do we see so many Shi'i groups like Iran, Hezbollah, Ansarullah in Yemen, meaning the Houthis, so many Shi'i groups that are waging this war against Israel, against the Zionist state, but we don't see similar things from Sunnis, from Sunni groups. Why is that? Why is there a discrepancy? And some Shia are claiming that, well, this is just inherent. This is inherent to Shi'ism. Shi'ism is all about fighting against the oppressor. Shi'ism is about Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, fighting against a power like Yazid, an oppressive power that ultimately kills Hussein. That's what Shi'ism is all about, being the underdog, fighting the greater powers. And Sunnism doesn't have that kind of courage. It doesn't have that kind of bravery. That's the difference. This is what they claim over and over again. We want to take a closer look at this. We want to analyze this critically and try to understand, well, what is the gap? What is the deficiency that we see from the Sunni world in responding to Israel, which is primarily killing Sunnis? Palestinian Sunnis. That's their main victims right now. That's not to say that they won't expand to attacking other groups equally as badly as they have directed genocide and ethnic cleansing towards Palestinians. That's certainly their plans for the Shi'is in Lebanon and the Shi'is in Syria and the Shi'is in Iraq, for example. But we need to, I think, analyze this question and bring some insights to it. Then in the second part of the show, I want to switch gears completely and look at some feminist questions, because I've been promising you that I want to address some of the quote unquote impossible questions given by feminists or Muslim women who are affected by feminist thoughts. So, for example, polygyny, the ability for a man to marry multiple wives. The question of how is this just, that's a question that's often asked and addressed. But what about the question of Jannah? Because in Jannah, we understand paradise, heaven, as being something that caters to desires of everyone. You know, it caters to the desires of men because men are going to have hur al-ain. How would you translate that? They're typically translated as virgins, 72 virgins in paradise, for example. Even though we know from many narrations that it's not limited to 72, actually. But the point is that men are, as a reward, the believing men are given that in paradise. But what about women? What about women? And you can say that, well, women don't have that desire, but women do have the desire for monogamy, right? But they won't get that. They won't get that in paradise. So isn't that unjust? Why do men get everything that they want, but women don't? In paradise, if you're going to be rewarded in Jannah by Allah. So this is the impossible question. I haven't seen this addressed in a systematic way anywhere online. I'm sure someone has addressed it, over the past 100 years when these feminist kinds of questions have arisen, but I haven't seen it online. So we want to address this. And these are real questions. We received a letter or an email from a sister asking these questions. And she was saying that she's desperate and she really needs answers. So we'll read the email or part of it, and we'll address some of these questions. She had 15 total questions. We're going to just get started on answering some of them on the episode later, inshallah. Okay, so how are you guys doing? Make sure to like the video. That helps in the YouTube algorithm. And make sure to get in the chat, put in your comments, try to keep it on topic, try to keep it respectful. And inshallah, we'll definitely address your super chats, bi'idhnillah. As long as they're relevant and as long as we have time. Okay. So getting started with the attack. So the context of this attack against Israel, or against Iran rather, is that Iran had this major strike earlier in October 1st, and we talked about this and analyzed it. How it was a game changer for the region. It was a game changer for Israel. Why? Because Israel now has to be careful how it operates in the Middle East. And the plan that it had after assassinating Hassan Nasrallah and decapitating Hezbollah, the plan was, okay, like, look how easily we have crippled or paralyzed Hezbollah. Hezbollah was the main proxy of Iran. We've decapitated them. So now the floodgates are open. We can just expand. And it's going to be a walk in the park, exactly like we were able to obliterate Gaza. And we're in the process of obliterating the West Bank. We're going to expand into southern Lebanon. We're going to put a foothold in there and annex as much as possible. And then, the world is our oyster. We can just go ahead and expand as needed. There's no one that can stop us. There's no one that can prevent us from being as aggressive as we want. But then October 1st came along, or early October came, and Iran had this massive strike and launched these 200 missiles, which are a small fraction of their total arsenal, because they have thousands. They have arguably tens of thousands of missiles that they've just been stockloading or stockpiling for over 2 decades, 3 decades. And they have aimed all of them towards Israel, and they're ready to launch. So this was a serious deterrent that Iran placed against Israel. No, you don't have a blank check to expand as aggressively as you want. The other major thing that happened, other than that strike, is that as Israel in the past month has started ground operations, it's only been a couple of weeks that they've had ground operations in southern Lebanon, they've been getting trounced. They've been getting curb stomped by Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. And this has been a disaster, because the whole point of the ground invasion was to show this kind of dominance. Why? Because Hezbollah has been launching rockets into northern Israel and has created a situation where many settlers, Israeli settlers, had to leave their villages, had to abandon their villages and their residences and stay in Tel Aviv, basically in hotels. And this has become a very difficult political situation for Netanyahu and the Likud government, because these settlers are wondering why our country, which is supposed to be the dominant superpower of the Middle East, is being bullied by this group of terrorists, this ragtag team of terrorists. That's the political crisis, part of the political crisis that Netanyahu faces. So the ground invasion was supposed to, well, okay, we did the whole pager attack, right? This pager attack, a humiliating defeat for Hezbollah and for Lebanon as a whole. We did the decapitation strike. We took out Hassan Nasrallah and all of the top brass of Hezbollah. So this is going to be a cakewalk. We're just going to stroll into Lebanon, and they're not going to have any chance. And by the way, they've continued all of these heavy strikes against residential areas in Beirut. They've threatened to hit, or they've partially hit, some of the hospitals in Beirut, some of the civilian infrastructure in Beirut. So they're trying to take the same strategy of ethnic cleansing that they've used in Gaza, and trying to push it into southern Lebanon, and eventually they wanted to push it all the way to Beirut and beyond. And they've also been, by the way, trying to escalate in the West Bank. And the reason that they can't do to Gaza to the West Bank what they've done to Gaza is because in the West Bank, it's not a homogenous population. It's not homogenous. You have a lot of Israeli settlers who are interspersed with Palestinians. So if you start mass carpet bombing like you did in Gaza, you're going to be liable to kill more Israelis than you would like to. So this is why politically they cannot carpet bomb the West Bank to get rid of the Palestinians in the West Bank in the same way that they do in Gaza. I mean, that was the whole reason that Israel evacuated or took out or forced Israeli settlers in Gaza to leave Gaza back in 2006. One of the main reasons is because they wanted to carpet bomb and punish the Palestinians in Gaza, and they can't really do that if they're Israeli settlers interspersed within the population in such a densely populated area. And that's the situation that they have in the West Bank, but they're trying to find a way to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians from the West Bank as well. Anyway, this is the context. Iran had this huge deterrent strike. We analyzed that. And many others analyzed it and said this is a game changer. Iran has established a qualitative military edge with this new technology, and the current air defense systems that Israel has and has been getting from the United States is not adequate to protect sensitive Israeli areas from these kinds of strikes from Iran. That is one major deterrent. The other major deterrent comes from these other Arab states in the Gulf, in particular, where they're very worried about Iran attacking their country. And Iran made this explicit. Any country, any of these Arab countries in the Middle East that assists Israel is going to be counted as a part of the Zionist project and therefore becomes a legitimate target. So if they let Israel to use their airspace, if they allow Israel to launch missiles from their territory, this is a red line. and Iran is not going to tolerate it, your oil bases are going to be targeted. And that's going to disrupt oil production for these countries. And that is really significant. That is really significant. Why? Because these regimes depend crucially on oil production. That is the lifeblood of these regimes. If that goes away, if Iran is able to cripple that or destroy that, that means that these regimes are going to be in a very bad position. Why? Two reasons. One, their international backers are not going to back them anymore. The only reason that you back these regimes is because you want to have cheap oil. You want to have cheap access to oil. And if the oil's no longer there, why should I waste my resources, any kind of diplomatic relations with your country, your desert country, basically? Like that's one danger. The second danger is internally. Internally, these regimes are able to get the population to back them. Why? Because they provide so much in subsidies, so much in benefits for the native population, like the native Saudis, for example, or the Khalijis. Obviously, not any migrants who are or expats who happen to be in those countries, but the native indigenous Arabs, Khalijis, they get tons of subsidies and money from the oil production that the government funnels to them. If that spigot has been turned off because Iran has struck the oil fields and crippled the oil production, then the flow of money stops, and then you get very angry people. You get an angry population, a dissatisfied population. Why should I even care about you, the House of Saud or the House of MBZ? Why should I support your regime? I'm not even getting any benefit from it. The monetary incentive has gone away. So that creates a great deal of instability. It creates instability. And when you look at Vision 2030, for example, in Saudi, or you look at the secularization program that's been put in place and executed by MBZ in the UAE, that depends on oil money. That secularization project depends on oil money. You say, we can give you concerts, we can give you westernization, we can give you Western movies, we can build cinema complexes, we can build these massive conferences dedicated to Marvel or the UFC fights or car shows, all of these kinds of Western cultural projects that oftentimes violate Islam. The reason that we can provide that is because we have all this oil wealth that is funding it, and we're appeasing the population. This is what the population wants: more freedom, more westernization, more media. That's what they want, but that depends on oil. And if Iran starts taking out these oil fields, that shuts off the spigot, that destroys all of these plans, all of these secularization plans. So that is a huge amount of leverage that Iran now has against the Gulf states. And that's why we have seen since these attacks where Iran struck the Nevatim air base in Israel, struck the Mossad headquarters, struck other strategic targets, military targets in Israel with these hypersonic missiles, and the Iron Dome and the THAAD air defense systems from the US couldn't do anything to stop it. Since that happened, now they've all changed their tune. All of these Arab states have changed their tune. Why? If Iran was just striking with fireworks, like it was just an empty show, performance, theater, why would Saudis suddenly change its tune and invite, some of these Iranian diplomats to strengthen ties? Why did they announce that they're going to have a joint Saudi-Iran naval exercises happening now? They announced that just a couple of days ago, just a few days ago. They are strengthening their ties, and Saudi is basically sitting on the fence now. Now, before, they had this belief that their security, the Saudi state security, depended on the United States and Israel And that's why they were about to sign onto the Abraham Accords and basically seal the deal. We are with the US and Israel. But then October 7th happened, and that created a lot of internal pressure. But the external pressure now has come from Iran militarily, and Iran has demonstrated that actually Israel can't do whatever they want. The US and Israel can't just do whatever they want. We have our own technology. And by the way, we also are getting backing from BRICS, from Russia, and from China. So Saudi now, the balance of power has shifted. Saudi has to shift. The Gulf has to shift and has to pay its respect to Iran. Has to pay its respect to Iran. So that's what's happening in the Gulf countries. So anyway, that's the context. Israel last night had multiple waves of attacks. But what were these attacks? Basically nothing. They struck just a handful, just 3 or 4 military targets, low level, low priority, low importance military targets. Apparently, Iran has air defense systems that they had in place and prepared, and their air defense also intercepted many of the missiles that were sent. And so this attack was a failure. It was complete failure in the sense that it wasn't shock and awe. It didn't cause mass destruction. It didn't really cripple Iran militarily or in terms of infrastructure. So what was really the purpose? And I was confused. Many were confused. This is the big response that we were waiting for. And even on Iranian social media, many people were mocking and insulting and making jokes about, well, look at what Israel is doing. It's, you know, this is the fireworks. These are fireworks coming from Israel. We were expecting long-range ballistic missiles, F-35 fighters dropping huge munitions on our nuclear sites or our military sites. None of that took place. Why? So it's always possible that this was just a decoy attack and Israel has a bigger operation in store. That is one possibility. Another possibility that seems more and more likely is that Israel agreed. And the U.S. tried to broker this because the U.S. did not want Israel to start a regional war with a massive counterattack on Iran. Israel made a deal that, okay, fine, we're just going to do something symbolic, but we're not going to actually do a massive attack. But that's still a humiliation for the Zionist state. That's still humiliation. Why? Because it shows that Israel is scared. Israel has been deterred. Israel has seen the light, basically, that they are not able to continue to escalate as much as they want and take all kinds of actions to attack their enemies. They are now scared. They're pulling back. And what lends credence or lends credibility to that theory is the fact that they've also just recently announced, just yesterday, that they're ending the ground operation in Lebanon. They have to pull back. They have to pull back their ground operation. Why? It's because dozens and dozens of their tanks, their Merkava tanks, are being obliterated. Why? Hezbollah has all these anti-tank missiles, some of them guided, and they're just getting rocked. They're getting curb stomped by Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. So they've announced that, okay, we have to pull back. That's a humiliating defeat. Obviously, they're trying their public relations, their PR on social media and on the news channels are announcing, no, this was a complete victory. Like, we have really sent a message to our enemies. Yeah, the message that you've sent is that you no longer are this undefeatable force in the Middle East. You're no longer this power that can bully and do whatever you want whenever you feel like it. That's the message that they've sent. So this is a humiliating defeat. Think about all the other historical engagements that Israel has had with Egypt, with Syria, with Jordan even. All of those military engagements, almost all of them, have been a complete victory for Israel. And they've been over after a few days, max a week. That's all it takes for Israel to reestablish its dominance and to wipe out all of the aggression against it. And sometimes they're able to take a lot of territory in those engagements, in those wars. So, yet in 2024 or 2023, it's taken a year and they still haven't been able to defeat Hamas. They tried to stop Hezbollah from its aggression. They failed. They tried to stop Yemen and the Houthis from their aggression. They failed. And they haven't been able to do anything to the Iranian regime other than assassinations, which they've been doing for decades now. But in terms of actually crippling Iran in its military capability, they failed. They failed, and the biggest failure is the inability to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. It's very credible now that Iran does have the nuclear technology. They have apparently done a nuclear test, and they have the missiles, the warheads that can deliver that payload, a nuclear payload. So Israel and the United States have been unable to prevent this disaster, because as soon as Iran, and they've been very clear about this, all of the analysts, all of the Zionist think tanks and Netanyahu himself has been very clear that Iran cannot be allowed to acquire nuclear weapons. Why? It fundamentally threatens the existence of the Zionist state. And Iran has acquired that. Iran has acquired that. Now, despite the best efforts of the U.S. to sanction Iran, to cripple Iran, they have not been able to prevent Iran from acquiring this technology. So this is just a massive defeat and humiliation for Israel. And the whole thing, the whole gamble that Israel made is that we're going to destroy our international reputation. We are going to basically turn the entire world against us. But it's going to be worth it, because we will be able to secure our future by taking out Hezbollah, by crippling Iran, and by expanding our territory without any kind of opposition. And we're going to solidify the Abraham Accords and the alliances that we have with our Arab neighbors. And so, yeah, sure, fine. The whole world will hate us. The whole world will call us genociders, mass murderers, mass rapists. We're going to get condemned in the International Criminal Court. But that's all worth it. Why? Because we will have secured our future. We will secure the future of the Jewish state. But they were not able to do that. They are not able to do that. Why? They didn't take out Hezbollah. They didn't take out the Houthis. They didn't cripple Iran. They didn't prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. They are not able now to solidify the Abraham Accords, because now those countries are very concerned about Iran's weapons capabilities. And they don't have the kind of military edge that they had before, because Iran's weapons are better than, or are able to defy, the defense systems of Israel and the United States. So these Arab states are just sitting ducks. They're just sitting ducks, and the only way to respond to that situation is to create more diplomatic ties with Iran and to solidify diplomatic relations with the Iranian government. So this is a disaster. This is an unmitigated defeat and disaster for the Zionist state. And this is what we were saying earlier in the month, and now this just solidifies it. Because if Israel did have this kind of shock and awe attack, retaliation against Iran, then we would say that, okay, well, maybe we were mistaken. Maybe we thought that Iran has this kind of qualitative military edge with their hypersonic missiles that they've developed. That's what we thought, but Israel is acting like it's not scared at all. The behavior of Israel is that actually we're not deterred. We're going to punish you. we're going to punish you severely for daring to strike our most secure airbase and our Mossad headquarters, our intelligence apparatus. We're going to punish you. We're going to humiliate you for daring to raise a finger against us, your lords. That, if they had that kind of strike, then we could have questioned whether Iran really had established deterrent power. If Israel has a meek response or a symbolic strike, then we would say, okay, then there's something there. Israel does seem scared. Israel does seem hesitant. Israel is treading lightly against Iran. And that's apparently last night, that's what happened. It was a symbolic strike. And there are reports that Iran is saying, yeah, we're not even going to bother to retaliate. This was nothing. There's not even a need for us to retaliate. So this is good news. This is great news in a lot of ways. It means that Israel finally has to worry. Netanyahu has to be sweating. He has to be very worried about what's going to happen, because you don't have the same kind of image as a bully that can do whatever he wants. That's definitely been the image of Israel in the Middle East for decades. But now you have a actual state military that is countering you and has certain advantages over you and is not afraid to strike you. That is a disaster. It's unmitigated disaster for Israel. But there are other questions that we can ask. There are other questions that we can raise, because, my thought has been that, and this is the thought that a lot of Sunnis have had, is, well, why isn't Iran doing more? Like, okay, fine, you've established that you have this technology, you have this deterrent power. How about using more of it to protect Palestinians and to force Israel to spare Palestinian lives? Can you do at least that? Why hasn't Iran done that? And I think that we have to come to terms with the fact that Iran is not an ideal Islamic state, obviously. Obviously. And I just want to repeat what I've said many times in public, that I'm a critic of the Iranian government. I'm a critic of the Iranian leadership. And there are many things that they can be criticized for. Shiism, obviously, being a deviant in their Shiism. Also, they do have a lot of laws that in Iran that are borrowed from secularism, from liberalism. The same kind of critique that you can give Ikhwan al-Muslimin. Like, Ikhwan also has a lot of liberalism and secularism. Like, they adopt wasatiyya, if you remember from our previous episodes critiquing the wasati modernist ideology. Iran also has some wasatiyya type of, obviously it's a different intellectual history of their modernism, but they are modernist in terms of their implementation of the Sharia. So we can criticize them on that. But the other criticism that now we increasingly have to ask is, why isn't Iran doing more to stop the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians? And we have to pressure, Iran and not claim that, oh, Iran is a hero and Iran is this and that because they have, they're the only ones attacking Israel. Yeah, we give them credit where credit is due. But now, if you have, as it seems, established a deterrent power, then exercise that deterrence for the sake of the Palestinians. We have to be more vocal in expressing this kind of criticism of the Iranian state. But again, it has to be balanced. It has to be balanced because the Sunni states obviously haven't done jack. The Sunni states haven't done anything. They've only cooperated in the ethnic cleansing and genocide of the Palestinians. So we have to be balanced, but we have to speak the truth as well. Iran, if they do have this deterrent power, should be doing more, especially moving forward. Use that leverage to cripple and to harm the Zionist state, since they are genociding our Muslim brothers and sisters. This is a moral responsibility that Iran has. Now you could say that, well, Iran is acting in its own interests and they care about their people first and foremost. If they engage in an all-out war against Israel, that threatens the about 100 million or so Iranian citizens, and they have to prioritize the safety of their own citizens. And to that, I say, okay, fine. That's still problematic morally in Islam. Like, Islamically, you are supposed to sacrifice for your brothers and sisters. You are supposed to sacrifice yourself for Islam and for the lives of Muslims. And that's the whole point of defensive jihad. When you fight a defensive jihad against an aggressor, you can't say, no, I'm going to run away and save myself and allow Muslims to be slaughtered. That is a hypocrisy. That's not allowed according to Islam. You have to stay and defend and protect. You can't just run away with your own life. So that should be acknowledged. The other aspect that we should acknowledge, however, is that at least they have a concern. The Iranian regime has a concern for their own population. That's more than can be said about these other regimes in the Middle East, unfortunately. A country like Jordan, for example, which has this massive Palestinian population. You think the Jordanian king cares about his population? Or does he care about just doing whatever Israel and the United States tell him to do? So Iran is wrong for desertion of Palestinians or not using their deterrent power more effectively. Maybe they will. We have to encourage them and pressure them to do so. They're in the wrong, but these Sunni regimes are much worse. You think that the king of Jordan or the king of the prince in Saudi, are they making decisions on the basis of what's best for their populations? Or are they doing what's best for Israel and the United States? So we could only dream and wish that these governments were acting like Iran. We're acting like Iran in just that way of prioritizing the interests of their people. But they're not even doing that. They're prioritizing the interests of the Zionists. This is terrible. This is a much worse hypocrisy and failure. So let's be fair, let's be just. And that's what I want to analyze now, is this question of Sunni leadership. Why do we not have the same kind of aggression against Zionism in the Sunni world as there are amongst the Shia? What explains that? Is this because there's a weakness in Sunnism? Is there a weakness that we don't have the same concept of fighting against oppression that the Shiis have? Let's address that. But first, let's go to super chats, because there have been a few that have been sent. I want to address the super chats, and I also want to address your comments. Daniel, if you get a chiseled jawline, you'll look like the Russian Giga Chad meme. Yeah, I don't know about that. Yeah, inshallah, let's see. I'm just in the middle of weight loss, a cut, like a major cut. So inshallah, make dua that I can shed these pounds and return to a healthy weight. So one of these days I'll share like the whole process. I mean, it's not complicated. It's just eating less and tracking calories basically. But if I can give you guys advice that might be useful, inshallah, then we'll talk about it one of these days. If you guys want tips on weight loss and fitness, diet, just say that in the chat, put that in the comments. If there's enough interest, then we'll have a part of a Haqiqat show maybe where I give you the inside scoop on weight loss. Thank you, Muhammad, for your super chat. Thank you, the other Muhammad, for your super chat. Really appreciate your support. Let's see. Zahib, thank you. Momo, thank you. Thoughts on the Saudi Muqab 2030 vision? Is it Dajjal? Yeah, so this is just a fulfillment. So this Muqab is like a huge cube-like structure that Saudi announced building last year, but apparently now they've broken ground on it. And it's supposed to be like the Kaaba, that's a big cube, but it's like dedicated to shopping and entertainment. So it's part of Vision 2030. It's supposed to be one of the largest structures or largest buildings ever built. So it's just a fulfillment of the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Hadith Jibril, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam prophesies that the Arabs, barefoot Arabs, are going to compete with each other for bigger and bigger, taller and taller buildings. So this is just one of the signs of Yawm al-Qiyamah, as mentioned in that hadith by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As for Dajjal, like, is it specifically Dajjalic? I haven't looked into the details enough to know if there's any connection there, but I wouldn't be surprised. Chocolate Walla has a good comment. Israel always acts with multiple goals in mind. I suspect the timing of the attack also had to do with the announcement of joint military operations with Saudi. So maybe this was like a fake out attack. The risk of that, though, is that everyone was anticipating a significant attack. And that's what the Israeli military is saying. This was the significant attack. So if you announce that, then you're kind of setting yourself up for high expectations. People are expecting something significant, but it wasn't significant. It was a dud from what, all the information that's coming out of Iran and all the analysts are saying. It was a dud. So you do reputational damage. That's like a bigger cost than the message that might be sent to Saudi. There's other ways that you can send the message to Saudi. Like if the big way to do a message to Saudi is to have like a shock and awe operation against Iran and to really hit all of their major bases, to take out their nuclear facilities, to hit major civilian infrastructure, that would send a huge message to Saudi and the Gulf that, hey, don't think that Iran can protect you. Don't think that we're scared of Iran. We're not. We are fully backed by the U.S., and the U.S. wants us to go gung-ho, hardcore against Iran, even if that means a regional war and potentially World War III. The U.S. backs us, and we're going to take it to that level. That would have sent a message to Saudi. This kind of weak sauce response sends the message that sends Saudi is like, okay, they are intimidated. Israel is intimidated. The U.S. is going to back down and not support whatever Israel wants to do. That's the message that's being sent to the Gulf. Now, you could claim that, well, maybe Israel is just waiting for the election. In the U.S. They're waiting for Trump to get in office, and then Trump is going to write them the blank check to launch massive strikes against Iran. Potentially. I think it's plausible that we haven't seen the end of retaliation. So we'll see what develops. Brother Ali says, thank you for discussing these important issues at a time where people are silent. Many people are silent about them and instead doing Aqidah inquisitions. Jazakallah khairan. Wa iyyakum. Thank you so much, brother, for your super chat. I really appreciate it. We're going to talk about why. Why are people silent? Aqidah inquisitions. What's your Aqidah, bro? That's part of it. But there's a bigger problem. And that's the question of Sunni leadership, Sunni aggression that we don't see. Why? That's what we're going to analyze. Let's see. Arabs are classed as Semites. Are the IDF anti-Semites? Yeah, I mean, according to a certain definition. The problem with anti-Semitism is that it's not an objective definition. There's not one objective definition of anti-Semitism. If you think about it logically, okay, being anti-Semitism meaning having racial hatred against Semites. Well, Arabs are Semites. Arabs are Semitic peoples. Therefore, anything anti-Arab would be anti-Semitic. But unfortunately, there's not a logical definition for anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is a fluid term that shifts and changes based on the perspectives of one particular group of Semites who manipulate the definition according to their political needs. And this is something that has been acknowledged by many Semitic intellectuals, Jewish intellectuals. And it's admitted, it's been admitted by these intellectuals as well, or by the Semites themselves. Okay. Halal Zoomer trying to instigate says, did you meet Nick Fuentes in real life? Backstory. Yeah, I did. I did meet him, and he's a nice guy. He's a nice guy in person, but some of his comments, more aggressive comments against Islam, his comments against Sneeko, I think that they're just completely inappropriate. He's just showing his level, unfortunately. He wants to create animosity with Muslims. Fine, you'll get animosity from Muslims, but that's because you're instigating it. It's not because Muslims are trying to attack you. So there was this social media last week, this social media uproar or hubbub or conflict when it came to Nick Fuentes laughing at Sneeko for getting banned off of 3 platforms. He was banned off of Kick, he was banned off of Twitch, he was banned off of YouTube, all within 48 hours. So Sneeko, unfortunately, taking that blow. I think he'll recover. Obviously, he's doing great, mashallah. He's still on Rumble, for example, and on Twitter. But some of these supposed friends, some of these supposed allies, like Fuentes, are laughing at him. Why? Why would you laugh? And this is a pattern of behavior from Fuentes, who also goes hard on his racial supremacy and makes fun of Haitians. And Sneeko is obviously half Haitian, and says really stupid type of bigoted comments that are not really necessary, because the thing about Fuentes is that he wants to portray himself as this intellectual analyst who is bringing intellectual framework for conservatism or this kind of nationalist, Christian nationalist movement. He wants to be an intellectual on one hand. He wants to achieve certain kinds of political goals against a primary enemy, his primary enemy, these Jewish institutions who are trying to cancel him and are trying to silence and censor his entire movement. That's his primary opponent. And, he has his argument, which is a plausible argument about how these institutions have destroyed the sovereignty of the United States. This lobby has destroyed the sovereignty of the United States. So that's his primary opponent. So when you have this massive opponent that is overpowered in so many respects, funded by billions and billions of dollars, endless political support, endless media support, financial support, academic support, you need allies. You need to have coalitions that you, on the basis of shared interests, you go against this much stronger power. And he has this habit of just sabotaging any potential kind of collaboration or alliance. And with Sneako, I haven't collaborated with him, but Sneako has. Sneako has platformed him at great risk to his own platform. Sneako has suffered financially. He has suffered in terms of his reputation by platforming Nick. And so when you have someone who is much more popular than you, much more established than you, with an actual platform on social media, you've been banned from everything. He's trying to bring you onto the mainstream because he believes in the underlying message opposing this kind of Zionist force. Then you stab him in the back. Like, that's really slimy behavior. That's really slimy. It's irrational. Like, it's both morally problematic, but it's also intellectually or strategically, it makes no sense. Why would you do that? Wouldn't you want, like, let's say Sneako slighted him privately, or Sneako said something to him that he didn't like. Okay, are you just like a little child that you have to lash out and you can't like just swallow your ego for a second for the sake of a greater cause that you supposedly are fighting for? It just doesn't make sense. It seems very immature and childish, which is strange because, again, he's billing himself as an intellectual, and he is intellectual, he is intelligent. But some of this behavior undercuts that image, and that's the thing. Like, when you have a social media audience, your audience is constantly goading you into doing stupid things. Your audience in the chat, if you listen to everything that your audience says and you start making like really funny racist comments, and you start like making these kinds of edgy comments that go too far, you start acting like this kind of dumb racist because your audience is goading you into that. That's to your detriment. Like, you as a streamer or you as a public intellectual have to be able to filter that out and understand that I can't just pander to my audience whatever they demand of me. That's going to really sabotage me, because I'm supposed to be above that. I'm supposed to be smart enough to understand all of the pieces of this puzzle and this overall strategy that is not going to be executed after a year or 2 years. This is like a 10, 20-year type of project. And how am I going to work towards that? So someone who has vision has to be able to understand that and not pander to an audience like, oh, I'm going to make a comment, like a racist comment about Haitians. I'm going to start insulting Islam. Also insulting Islam in the most irrational way, because calling Islam a Middle Eastern desert religion is stupid, because guess where Christianity originated? And Sneako had this great point. He was like, do you think like Jesus Christ was a wasp? Like, he was in the country club, like wearing a polo shirt and playing golf? Like, is that your image of Jesus? Like, he's a suburbanite from Connecticut, like in the country club. Like, is that your image of Jesus? No, Jesus was, alayhi salam, was wearing sandals as well. He was also in the Middle East in an arid environment. He was also preaching to Middle Easterners. Semites. He was a Semite. So it's just irrational own goals that you're scoring, and it's sabotaging your purported overall mission. So if someone is Fuentes' audience, maybe try to talk some sense into him, maybe be smarter. But I mean, that's also his arrogance. He's going to say, oh, you're not white. Don't tell me how I'm supposed to bring in the Christian nationalist vision that I have, and you're not white. So, okay, whatever, be dumb. Puff out your chest. So that's what I have to say about that. All right, let's move on to the next part of the episode, where I talk about Sunni leadership and the critique from these Shia that, well, why are the Sunnis not doing jack? Why is it just the Shia groups that are attacking Israel and defending Palestinians? The Sunnis aren't doing anything. And this is a point of great self-consciousness. You could even say humiliation for a lot of Sunnis. And that's part of the emotional reaction, unfortunately, where Sunnis will say, well, Iran's not doing anything. Hezbollah is not doing anything. It's just fireworks shows. It's just the Houthis aren't doing anything. It's just fireworks. This is kind of like an ego defense mechanism to cope with the fact that you don't have Sunni groups that are doing the same thing or anything close to that. But we have to put emotion aside. That's been my consistent message to Muslims, is that let's put emotion aside. Let's judge things in a fair and just way. Let's judge things according to the reality. But still, we have this question of Sunni failure. And, we'll just say it what it is. It is a failure, but it's a failure because of certain plots and campaigns that have been waged against Sunnis. And so there are two components that I'm going to talk about. There are external factors, and then there are internal factors. First, let's talk about the external factors. One of the main reasons that we don't have Sunni groups that are attacking Israel is that Israel and the United States have dedicated so much energy to neutralize any kind of anti-Zionist Sunni movement. And the thing is that any anti-Zionist Sunni movement has also been Islamist. So the main example is Ikhwan al-Muslimin, the Muslim Brotherhood. So as you know, I have my critique of the Muslim Brotherhood. I have my critique of their scholars. I have a critique of their wasatiyah, like their reformist kind of liberalized Islam. Like it's a kind of a conservative Islam. Like that's deviance. We can critique them. But Ikhwan al-Muslimin is Islamist. They want government that is informed by Islam, and they're also anti-Zionism, pro-Palestinian. So Israel and the United States have dedicated so much resources and so much time to neutralizing Ikhwan al-Muslimin and basically wiping them out, basically ensuring that they have no influence, whether it's in Saudi, whether it's in Jordan, whether it's in other countries in the region. Neutralizing Ikhwan al-Muslimin, neutralizing any kind of Islamism. So even if you're not Ikhwan al-Muslimin, but you have this kind of Islamism just means that you want Islamic government. You want an Islamic government, that means you're an Islamist. Technically, all Muslims should be Islamists. But unfortunately, there is secularization. Much of the Muslim world has been secularized. But the point is that any kind of Islamist group or movement, Sunni group, has been attacked, has been neutralized. And there's been so much effort from governments, from these Sunni governments, to internally quell and internally sabotage any kind of Sunni Islamic revival because they view it as a threat. Contrast this with Iran. Iran has done the opposite. Iran itself, the regime is an Islamist regime. Again, there's many criticisms. They're basically conservatives. They're deformist. Even put aside their Shiism, but even in terms of their vision of what is an Islamic state, it's not, authentic Islam. It's a modernized, liberal version of Islam with kind of constitutional democracy. That's really what they have implemented in Iran as well. So that can be critiqued. But it's still, Islam is informing the government there. Islam is informing the government, and they're anti-Zionist, pro-Palestinian. So they don't have the same kind of pressure to quell Islamism internally within Iran because that's what the government is. When they don't expend that kind of energy internally, they have a lot more resources and energy and attention to spend externally. So what Iran does is it empowers and it funds and it arms other Shi'i Islamist groups in the Middle East. That's been their whole strategy. Why? Because their main opponent, which is Israel and the United States, does the opposite. What Israel and the United States do is they arm these extremist groups, these extremist Sunni groups like ISIS, in order to attack not only other Sunnis, but also Iran. That's been their strategy, is to foment civil war and extremism. And this is, again, part of the Yunon plan that we've discussed over and over and over again on many episodes of Haqiqatjou. So to counter that, Iran has done the opposite. Okay, we're going to arm and fund the Shia groups, the Shia Islamist groups. Obviously, the U.S. not only funds the extremists, but the Sunni extremists, but they also fund the secularists. And they empower the secularists, these tyrants, to clamp down on the Sunni population, on the pious, the religious groups. So Iran's strategy has been to counteract, and they have the resources, they have the time and energy and the attention to spread, to arm the Houthis, to arm Hezbollah, to arm Iraqi Shia groups. And now there was news that even in Saudi, there is a new group that has launched 2 drones at Israel. And it also turns out to be a Shia group in Saudi. And I don't know what the Saudi government is going to do about that, but this was also announced that they launched 2 drones, and they posted the video on Twitter. So this is Iran backed. Now imagine if the Sunni states had this same strategy. Imagine if the Sunni states, rather than repressing their Sunni religious population, repressing the Islamist attitudes of their population, they adopted Islamism. They became more Islamic. They started promoting Sunni Islamism in the region. They would be as powerful as Iran, or they could potentially get the influence and the power that Iran has. But instead, they are spinning their wheels, constantly trying to repress their population. For who? For the benefit of Israel and the United States. This is the failure. It's a failure externally, because these states are just repressing the Sunni population. That's the explanation. That's part of the explanation. Then you get into other specific internal factors, because you have madkhaliism, you have sectarianism, this kind of Salafi, but also sometimes Sufi sectarianism. That also saps the energy of Sunnis, because they're constantly infighting. They're constantly infighting, they're constantly undermining each other, they constantly are takfiring each other. Sunnis takfiring Sunnis. Forget about like alliance with the Shia. Forget about that aspect. They are takfiring other Sunnis. Like, oh, you're an Ash'ari, you are at minimum a deviant. You're a Sufi, you're at minimum a deviant, and also likely you could be a kafir. Therefore, I might as well just ally with Israel and the United States as opposed to you. You're a Mortad, as opposed to allying with Jews and Christians. So I'm going to ally with the Jews and Christians. Like, that is the internal cancer, or the internal conflict that keeps Sunnis embroiled in a civil war that saps their energy, saps their attention. And the Madkhalis, which we've covered, maybe you've seen the video that we published, Judeo-Muslims. We published that a couple of days ago. Go watch that if you haven't. Their whole job is to create as much disunity and conflict among Sunnis as possible. That's their whole job. Sectarians, same thing. Like, even if they're not technically Madkhalis, like, what distinguishes Madkhalis from other sectarians is that the Madkhalis are just much more hardcore about never criticize the ruler, never criticize these Gulf rulers. They're, we've already covered the deviance of that kind of view. These other sectarians, they're not going to be as hardcore about not criticizing the ruler, but they're equally sectarian. They're the ones who are making constant videos about what's your aqidah, bro? What's your what are you hiding? They're the ones who are making those videos. And again, like the role that they play, it's being a useful idiot for Zionism. It's being a useful idiot where Sunnis can't unite to an extent where they're able to form groups that can pursue bigger projects, like establishing a Sunni revival that has political implications for the Middle East, a political revival. We can't really focus on that because we're too busy interrogating others on what do you think about Yadullah? Like, what exactly is your understanding of Yadullah, the hand of Allah or the shin of Allah? Secondary aqidah issues. So this is an internal problem that Sunnis have, and we can't get to where we need to go until we address this problem. And I've, again, been on the tail end of this problem. I've been attacked and targeted because of these sectarians. Why do you think that is? These sectarians have attacked me, usually unprovoked. Like, I haven't specifically said anything against them. They're the ones who make videos about me over and over again. Unprovoked attack. Why? Why do you think that they're targeting me? And I tweeted about this recently that, when we look at the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, they have been attacking many pro-Palestinian activists and calling them anti-Semites. But they really haven't been targeting many Muslims and Muslim religious speakers. And I'm the only exception. When it comes to American Muslim religious speakers or preachers or du'at, it's pretty much only me. I don't know anyone else that they have attacked. Why? Why am I like a target? And I'm not trying to praise myself, but it's a question that I ask myself. Like, am I alone? Like, is there not other speakers or du'at that are launching these types of critiques or making these kinds of claims? What have I been talking about for the past year? For the past year, I've had two main issues. One is Judaism/Zionism, critiquing that ideology, critiquing that religion and how it lends itself or leads to or drives ethnic cleansing of Palestinians and the horrors and the atrocities that we see within Palestine. That's been the first focus. And the second focus has been the need for Muslims to get their act together, specifically by allying with each other, forming alliances with different groups, most importantly, alliances with other Muslim groups. So we should bridge the gap and cooperate and ally with Shia. We should cooperate and ally with those from different manahij, different aqidah schools, and work towards a bigger goal. Those are my two main messages. And both of these are antithetical to Zionism, contrary to the interests of the Israeli state. And that's why the ADL, which is tied directly to the Israeli government, has been targeting me and has multiple articles on me, tweets on me, and they've been working very hard to try to deplatform me. So, but this is, why am I alone? That's my question. Like, why am I? Where are the other speakers? Where are the other du'at? And the answer is pretty simple. The other speakers aren't talking about these two issues. Other speakers will talk about the atrocities that Israel commits. Other speakers will talk about political Zionism as a problem. That's good, at least. At least they're doing that. But they're not necessarily talking about unity with other Muslims, and they're not talking about Judaism, and they're not really talking about how Judaism and Zionism is this wider ideology. And what are the specifics of that ideology that leads to committing genocide against Palestinians? They don't talk about those topics. Why? Because of pressure from the ADL, pressure from these Zionist groups to deplatform, to demonetize, to basically cancel you. That's my analysis. Maybe you have a different analysis, but I want to substantiate this. I want to substantiate this claim. And we need to investigate more clearly, because this is a scandal. As far as I'm concerned, this is a scandal. Instead, you have like even masajid, you have mosques that are putting their imams on probation or firing their imams or their khatibs if they make any statements against Judaism as a religion or against certain Jewish beliefs. These are beliefs that are directly implicated or directly involved in driving many of the actions of Jews in Israel and the Israeli state overall. So shouldn't they be critiqued by Muslims? These groups, these Zionist groups, have no problem critiquing Islam. They have no problem opening the Quran, opening Hadith, and spewing all kinds of lies, anti-Islam lies about our religion. And they do it openly. And in fact, their trash is boosted by the algorithms on YouTube and Twitter and elsewhere. Someone like Ben Shapiro, who does critique Islam and does critique Muslim immigration and Muslim immigrants, and puts out all of these racial caricatures, puts out all of this anti-Islam bile, he gets boosted by YouTube. He gets boosted by the algorithms. But a Muslim khatib in his local mosque can't like have a critique of Judaism and how it's connected to what the Zionist state is doing to Palestinians, when even the leader, the prime minister of Israel, is quoting the Bible and is invoking religious principles and doctrines like Amalek. You can't talk about that as an imam. And it's the masjid board that's firing you, or sometimes is reporting you. Sometimes the masjid board is reporting their imam. This is a case that I heard about, but I haven't got a chance to look into it, in the UK, where a imam was reported to the Home Office or to counter-terrorism office or whatever. I forgot the details, because he said, he narrated a hadith or a verse of the Quran about Christians and Jews. He's an extremist. Do you see like the two levels of incompetence? One, the religious leadership is not addressing the systematic problem with Zionism, with Judaism, and how those operate to create the situation that we're in now. Not only when it comes to what's happening in Palestine, but also how governments are being manipulated to censor and to deplatform and to even get into legal trouble Muslims and pro-Palestinian activists in the West. There's not an effort to counter that. There's not an effort to analyze that, investigate that, strategize about that. That in itself is such a massive failure and such a massive dereliction of duty that it's hard to overstate it. But not only is there that failure, but we're also reporting ourselves. We're also reporting ourselves and accusing each other of being anti-Semitic and being radicals because we have this kind of pro-Palestinian activism. The few imams who dare to open their mouths, the few imams who dare to say something about the bigger picture, they are getting shut down. They're getting fired. This is happening in Sunni mosques, in the Sunni Muslim community. So this is another part of the problem. You have madkhalis. We can all dunk on madkhalis all day long. It's fun. Sectarians, yeah, now we're getting to more familiar with what these sectarians are actually doing. They're trying to rip apart the Muslim community, whether it's for their ego, whether it's for their, they want to just puff out their chest and dunk on Sufis or dunk on Salafis or whatever, and they want to dedicate themselves to that. And then ultimately that lends itself to the Zionist project. Okay, whatever. We're getting to learn that. But what about the Sunnis that don't fall into those two categories? Even they are ineffective or they're being actively silenced. That is a scandal. That is a scandal, and we have to call it out. And that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do more and more. Because what is the real problem here is cowardice. We have cowards. We have people, Sunnis, who are acting like cowards. They are not saying what they need to say. Okay, fine. Like, we can't change things with our hands because literally we will be, you know what's going to happen. We can't travel. We can't move around. We can't do anything in that way. But we can speak. We can organize. We can create systems. We can create programs. We can create projects, especially in the West. Especially in the West, where we can influence politics. That's the claim that's always made, that Muslims need to get involved with politics. Oh, okay, how do we get involved in politics? Oh, just vote for Ilhan Omar. Vote for Ilhan Omar and vote for Rashida Tlaib and any kind of like hijabi that comes on the ballot, vote for her. That's how, or non-hijabi, just vote for her. We need to fundraise and be so proud when they get elected to Congress. Like that's the extent of political vision when it comes to the Muslim community in the West. And there's literally not even an idea or a sense of what politics can mean outside of that. Like that's how illiterate the community is. I'm going to be frank, I'm going to be very frank with you, and it's going to be bitter medicine, but you need to hear it. We don't even have the idea of a think tank. We don't even have the idea of a think tank. And I have to say this over and over and over again. Why is there not a Muslim think tank in the West that is dedicated to the cause of Islam? A religious think tank. Why does that not exist? That is a huge scandal. That is a huge failure. We have Muslims involved in think tanks, but the problem is those think tanks aren't dedicated to the cause of Islam or the interests of Muslims. You have other religious groups have plenty of think tanks, political think tanks. Jewish groups have their think tanks, a plethora of think tanks. Hindu groups now increasingly are creating think tanks, are starting think tanks and funding it with millions of dollars. They're also getting millions of dollars from the BJP government in India to advocate for Hindu interests. Where is the Muslim think tank? And the funny, sad thing is you have all these Muslims who are like, oh, we need to establish a khilafah. We need to establish a khilafah, a caliphate. That's our goal. You can't even establish a think tank. You can't even build a think tank. Think about that, the level of failure or the level of ignorance. Like, okay, we can build masajid and we can build madrasas. Beautiful, amazing, excellent. Build more masajid, build more madaris. But what is the point of those madaris when those madaris and those masajid aren't producing Muslims that can actually move the needle politically and do something that impacts the world? Do something that impacts the world in terms of stopping genocide of Muslims, stopping the slaughter of Muslims, actually being able to counteract that. And I'll tell you why, and it's cowardice. You're spending money. If you build a think tank that's actually going to fight for Muslim interests, that's politically incorrect. That's going to be politically incorrect because we live in the secular liberal West. And a think tank that is truly dedicated to an Islamic cause and Muslim interests is going to run afoul of these governments or these political platforms. That creates conflict. We don't want conflict. We want to just be the good immigrant. We want to be the good minority. Yeah, we'll build a mosque, and the khatib will tell us all about the importance of treating women well, treating Muslim women nicely. And we'll build the madrasa, you know, make sure that the madrasa doesn't get into any kind of politics, obviously. I'm being very frank with you, madrasas that recognize, yeah, this is a problem. We are teaching our students all about fiqh and all about tafsir and all about usul al-fiqh and Quran, etc., etc. Our students are learning the qira'at, but they're very uninformed. Our students are very uninformed when it comes to politics, philosophy, when it comes to these social movements, when it comes to feminism, when it comes to Zionism. We really have a lack or a gap in our educational offering on those subjects. Maybe we can have Daniel. Maybe we can have Daniel come and fill this gap, and he can, you know, give us a lecture maybe once a month. Maybe we can do that. And then what happens? It gets canceled. It gets canceled, you know, after a week without even proceeding, without even such a program starting. Why? Well, it's too controversial. Daniel is too controversial, so we can't do that. So yeah, I'm very shocked. I'm very shocked. This is not something that happened recently. This is from years ago. But that shows you the cowardice. You are not willing to confront, and you're not willing to be politically confrontational. You are not willing to politically stand for what is true because you're scared. You're scared. So if you're scared, you're going to be weak. You're going to be easily manipulated. You're going to be destroyed. And Allah is going to replace you. Allah is going to replace you as He's promised to do. So this is an institutional failure. You want khilafah, and then you have Muslims who are saying, "Oh, we need our own social media platform." They say as they type on YouTube. And then you tell them, "Why don't you subscribe to another alternative platform like Rumble?" They don't do it. They don't even bother to like download a secondary app, for example. Or to like use a VPN if you can't access it directly, to use a VPN to subscribe separately. They won't even take the time to do that. And part of the reason, I'll tell you why, they're scared that, oh, well, all of our information online is being tracked. So if I subscribe to MuslimSkeptic or I go on Rumble and I watch a video, I'm going to be put on a list. And I don't want to jeopardize being put on a list. They're scared. So, but they, you know, oh, we need a separate social media. You can't even support like a separate channel, like an alternative, a slightly politically controversial channel. You can't even support that. You can't even put your weight behind that, let alone money behind that, let alone support that. But you want like a whole social media ecosystem separate. You want like a khilafah, but you can't even support a think tank. You can't even fund a think tank or build a think tank that's actually dedicated to Islam. Yeah, these are contradictions. These are inconsistencies. And then wondering, oh, well, why are we so weak? Why are we so weak? We can't just blame everything on the tyrants. We can't just blame everything on the king of Jordan or the crown prince of whatever. Or King Fulan. We can't just blame them for everything. Some of the blame falls squarely on the Sunni Muslim population, the Sunni Muslim community. Sorry, I mean, that's bitter medicine, but it is what it is. You're not willing to sacrifice the minimum by just speaking out. You lose nothing. You lose nothing. Like if you're that scared and that fearful, then you should be written as a coward. You should be written as a coward with Allah and with the angels, and that should be your status. So it's shocking. But let me show you something that was really shocking, because we need to get into the feminism stuff. I mean, am I wrong? Tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if what I'm saying is incorrect. I want to know. Okay, here's what's shocking. This is something that I just was looking into today. And I haven't done full research into this. So let me put that caveat out there. Let me start now to say that I haven't done full research. This is something that I just was looking into today before the show. I found it shocking. Maybe I'm incorrect. You can correct me in the comments. But I want to see, like, what, when we look at the religious Islamic institutions in the West, the major ones that have the biggest following, to what extent are they actually fighting against Zionism in the past year? Because we have these religious institutions. They're Sunni. And they put out a lot of content. They are funded with millions of dollars, literally millions of dollars. Some of these organizations are so wealthy that they have trusts. They have trusts that generate money on their own. Millions of dollars that they're just saving away. So some of these organizations, when you pay them $1,000, imagine, or $500, they're not using that for operations. They're not using it to pay a writer or to pay a video editor or to pay a graphic designer or to pay their cost or a salary or whatever. They're saving it in a trust, a halal trust, and that trust generates, it's like an investment. It generates its own income. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that that's how much money that they have. Like, they're quite wealthy. So what are these organizations doing specifically when it comes to countering Zionism as an ideology? That's the question I have. Because when you look at what Zionists are doing, or even Hindu groups are doing, they are funding think tanks. They are funding political action groups. They're funding institutions that are dedicated to the Zionist cause. They're building institutions on campuses, in the elite institutions, so that they can influence campuses to become more aligned with Zionism. So many different, these are all political activities that they're engaged with, all for the purpose of this ideology of Zionism. Where is the Muslim counterpart to that? There's nothing. There is nothing. The only kind of imagination that Muslims have is that if we want to be involved in politics, we have to go and vote for Kamala. Or if we're not going to vote for Kamala, we have to vote for Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate. Or we don't vote at all. Like, that's the extent of the understanding of politics, unfortunately, at the communal level. This is a scandal, like, because this is so shameful that our thinking as a community hasn't progressed beyond that. And the point that I always mention is that the minimum is being able to have one think tank, just one think tank. Do you even know what a think tank is and what a think tank does? MuslimSkeptic, we're trying to develop and evolve into that. And we're facing all kinds of obstacles and roadblocks that we have to overcome. But it doesn't have to be us. Like, why not start any other kind of think tank and build that is politically oriented? I gave you the diagnosis. Why? Because a political think tank that's truly dedicated to the cause of Islam and Muslim interests is going to be politically controversial, and therefore it's going to come under heat, and therefore no one wants to have that heat. They're cowardly. They're cowardly. That's my assessment. Maybe you have a different assessment of that. But nonetheless, you have these organizations. They're well-funded. They're collecting. They're vacuuming up donations from pious religious Muslims. And what have they actually done on this bigger frame to oppose this bigger ideology? You have many groups that will have pro-Palestinian activism. But what does that activism actually entail? It's a humanitarian type of activism. Like, Palestinian women and children are suffering and we need to help them with aid. And we need to help them. And Israel is wrong. Israel shouldn't be doing this. Israel is a terrorist state. That's all it is. It doesn't, even the ones who are doing that, they never extend their activism or their critique to Zionism as a whole or Judaism as a whole and the operation of these lobbies specifically against Muslims and against Palestinians. You don't see that. So how can we gauge this? I had a tweet several years ago where I was looking at Mufti Menk and pointing out that Mufti Menk, first of all, he rarely ever mentions the word Allah in his tweets. He just uses like the Almighty. He never uses Allah, which I thought was strange. And I got a lot of backlash for that from all these fanboys, Mufti Menk fanboys. But then people also notice that he never says Israel. He actually never tweets about Israel or says anything about Israel. Yeah, he'll say, let's make dua for our Palestinian brothers and sisters. He'll never actually say Israel. Why? Because that's more controversial. That will generate animosity. That will generate pressure that he doesn't want to deal with, so he doesn't mention it. That's Mufti Menk. But to my surprise, you also have other imams who they have avoided talking about certain subjects. Now, I want you to verify this because sometimes Twitter doesn't work. Their search function doesn't work. Sometimes you can't really get accurate results from their search. So if we look at Omar Suleiman, his account, if you type in from Omar Suleiman, his account, this word, Jew, there's nothing. Over the past year, in fact, over his entire Twitter career, he has never used the word Jew. That's interesting, okay? Judaism. He's never used the word Judaism. Isn't that, strange? Wouldn't talking about Judaism be very relevant given the fact that that is the religion of Benjamin Netanyahu? And that is what the Zionist state is based off of, is the religion of Judaism? Shouldn't there be something, one tweet, just one tweet on Judaism, pointing out certain things about the religion, about Amalek maybe? So this is, I think, if I'm correct, if this Twitter search is correct, if you go to latest, sometimes top doesn't show, the top tab here doesn't show anything, but latest will have a more comprehensive list. Shouldn't there be something on Judaism? So then Jewish, there is a tweet, but it's praising, Jewish film director Sarah Friedland. But there's nothing on Jewish prime minister, Jewish state, the Jewish state of Israel, the Jewish senator, the Jewish, whatever. Is it strange? Is it, I don't know. You tell me. Then Zionist. Do this search and see. Maybe I'm wrong. So I'm putting that caveat there. If someone says, Daniel, you're wrong, your search is actually incorrect, I'll correct. On the next Haqiqat show that I do, I will retract and I'll correct. Look at hundreds of tweets from Omar Suleiman on Zionism, on Zionists, on Judaism, on hundreds of tweets. I'll correct myself. But I'm specifically looking for these words. I know that he tweets on Israel. I know that he tweets on Palestine. I know he does. He does a lot. Okay? So, and may Allah reward him for that. He does that. But look at my critique. Don't confuse my critique and say that I'm being uncharitable or unfair. I'm saying, what about the critique of the larger ideology? The larger ideology of Zionism and Zionist power, Zionist institutions, and the role of Judaism in what is happening in Palestine. Where is that kind of leadership? Where is that kind of critique? It's not found from these figures and from these popular institutions. That is my point. Not they have the humanitarian activism. Palestinians are suffering. Look at these Palestinians who are being bombed. He has that. Many. That's great. May Allah reward him and any Muslim, anyone who, even non-Muslims who are advocating for this. That's great. But I'm talking about this other level, which is as important, if not more important. It's arguably more important to talk about the overall system, to hit the root of the issue, the root cause, the root problem. That's arguably more important to address that as opposed to the humanitarian side. The humanitarian side, even the Democrats, even Kamala Harris says that, yeah, we need to reduce the humanitarian suffering and, oh, these images are terrible. Even Kamala Harris and Joe Biden say that. That's, many people are saying that. But what we need from people who claim to be imams and who claim to be leaders and who claim to be, having these institutes, these research institutes, what we need from them is a critique of Zionism and Judaism and these political systems that are operating in the West in order to serve Israel and its genocide. That's what we are missing. This is a dereliction of duty. So Zionist, there's just one tweet on Zionist. Please, someone disprove me. He's calling this guy a Zionist shill. This guy in the State Department. Okay, that's good. But literally, that's the only time you've used the word Zionist? Is this correct? Is this Twitter search correct? Or is there a glitch? Prove that it's a glitch, and I'll rerun the search. But I think that's the only tweet that he's had on Zionist. Nothing on Zionism. Nothing on Zionism. Am I making like a mountain out of a molehill here? Or is this actually scandalous? I think it's scandalous, but maybe I'm just biased. Okay, so that, to be fair, my critiques are always honest and they're fair, inshallah. He does tweet a lot about Israel. He criticizes Israel. Israel is a terrorist state. Israel has killed Palestinians. Jewish-led protests erupted. So this is the Jewish activists against Israel. So a lot against Israel. That's good. But again, it's not Israel operating by itself. Israel is operating on the basis of Judaism, and Israel is operating due to the efforts of the Zionist lobby and Jewish activists in the West, in America. Where is that overarching critique? Does it exist? Because I haven't followed everything that he's put out in the past year or the past 13 months. So you can correct me. So this is great. This is great stuff. Allah reward him for this critiquing of Israel. But Zionism and Zionist, Judaism, Jew, nothing. There's no critique. So then, but he's not the only one. He's not the only one. Have you seen Noman Ali Khan, for example? Has Noman Ali Khan said anything against the larger Zionist system? And you can say that, oh, but Noman Ali Khan is only concerned about learning Arabic. He's only concerned about Arabic in the Quran. You don't think that the Quran has anything to say about what's happening in the world right now? He applies the Quran to all kinds of situations, like, oh, your family is like, you're having conflict in your family, or you have conflict in your marriage, or you have this or that doubt. He applies the Quran. Like, that's what makes his material relevant, is he's taking Quranic tafsir and he's applying it to everyday situations that people face. What about a larger critique of Zionism? What about a larger critique of Israel? Does that exist? Is there like even one lecture? Maybe there is. Maybe he has one lecture or one khutbah that he gets into that. But that's not enough. That's my point. That's not enough. One lecture, one tweet, one article over the course of 1 year, that's not sufficient. That's not satisfactory. That's not meeting the need, the existential crisis that we're facing. Because even if you don't care about the Palestinians, which you claim to do, you have a lot of lip service for that in a humanitarian way. Even if you do care about the Palestinians, or you don't care about the Palestinians, what about the rest of the ummah? Because this kind of Zionist aggression has its tentacles across the entire globe, as I've explained many, many times. So that is Noman Ali Khan. Let's check out some other individuals. Sorry, I'll have to type it in. I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, let's do the same exercise with Yasser Qadi. Yasser Qadi also claims to be this intellectual mujaddid, mujtahid. If he doesn't claim it, then his followers claim it. So we should see a lot of intellectual work being done on Zionism, on Judaism, etc., right? Like a sustained effort, a sustained project to counter. Do we see that? So he has some tweets on Jew. Let's see. This is from March 2023, so this is not related. This is people of all faiths coming together, not related. This is from 2020, not related. 2020, not related. 2018, 2016, 2015. So the past year, or since October 7th, nothing from Yasser Qadi. Okay, how about Judaism? No results. No result on the religion of Judaism. Okay, Zionist. So is this like, look at this search. Is this like a wrong search? Like, this is from October 13th, 2022. It's not even from the past year. Zionist. Is he like avoiding the subject, or maybe like he doesn't post anything on Twitter about Zionism and like everywhere else he does, but that would be surprising. Like, isn't Twitter is the most open platform and has the least censorship on the topic of Zionism. So in the chat, please, if I'm being unfair, because I know that he speaks about Palestine. Yasser Qadi speaks about Palestine. Don't say that Daniel is a liar. Daniel claimed that Yasser Qadi never said anything in support of Palestine. That's not what I'm saying. He does. May Allah reward Yasser Qadi, Omar Suleiman, Noman Ali Khan, and other popular speakers. May Allah reward them for every tweet, every video, every statement, every article that they have said and made in support of Palestine. They will go and they will wear the keffiyeh and they will go and be activists for Palestinians. Listen to my point. This is a humanitarian cause, a humanitarian angle that they have. And that's good. It's important. It's necessary. But it's not enough. It is not what is needed. There's an important component that's missing if you're not critiquing the overall power structure, the overall ideology. And my thesis is that they don't address it because it's politically incorrect and they will jeopardize themselves. They don't want the ADL coming after them. They don't want to lose their university positions. They don't want to be banned from traveling to the Gulf states. They don't want to face those consequences. What other explanation is there for you not to address this issue, especially if you claim to be an intellectual, especially if you claim to be having the president of a research institute? That's my critique, you know. So no tweets that I can see when I go to latest. If you go to top results, see top results in the top tab, it doesn't give you any results. I don't know why. But if you go to latest, there's nothing from 2023. What's going on here? He tweets about a lot of things. Okay, how about Zionism? Okay, here we have something. October 12, 2023. The impact of Hindutva extremism in America and the globe. Also learn about the direct relationship between the BJP and Zionism Israel. Great. That is good. He has a lecture, a YouTube lecture on this. Great job. It's from October 12th, so over a year ago. I don't know I haven't actually listened to it, but that's it. Then the next thing is from 2021. What does this say? Sadly, this is the real face of Zionism. Great, critiquing Zionism, but it's from 2021. So the past year, there's nothing? Please correct me if I'm wrong on this. If I'm completely off base, I'll apologize. I'll retract in the next episode, inshallah. Because as I said, this is just very quick research. Just doing Twitter search, and sometimes the Twitter functionality is not operating correctly. But from what I can tell, from what I can see, the Twitter search is functioning and there's just no results coming up. Now, how about Zaytuna College? Another one of these institutions that gets millions of dollars every year, tens of millions of dollars every year from the Muslim community. Do they have anything on Zionism? No, nothing. We're talking about like these elite institutions like Harvard having protests, campus protests in support of Palestine. Where's the campus protests on Zaytuna's campus? Maybe they do have protests, but isn't it a Muslim college? Like, shouldn't the entire university be dedicated to this issue? But nothing. They haven't, their official account, Zaytuna College account, 0 tweets on Zionism, 0 tweets on Zionist, on Israel, okay? 2 tweets on Israel. One is from both of them are from 2015. The end of the 2-state framework will move Israel solidly into either a full-fledged apartheid state or, I guess it was a Facebook post. That's the only thing that they have from 2015, about a decade ago. Then Zaytuna College, Palestine. What have they said about Palestine? The tweets from 2016. And they're all from like Dr. Hatem Bezian, who is Palestinian himself. And even then, it's from 8 years ago. Isn't this a scandal? Isn't this shocking? Yeah, Noman Ali Khan. But Noman Ali Khan doesn't use his Twitter account, so. Okay. I mean, then you have like Yaqeen Institute. Your credible source on contemporary Islamic topics. Yeah, I'm sure. So what are they talking about when it comes to Palestine? They have articles. They have articles on Palestine, but again, it's humanitarian. It's within a completely left-wing liberal frame, and they don't even go as far as some of these left-wing activists. You have left-wing activists that will criticize Judaism, that will criticize Zionism on that level, will criticize the Israeli lobby. They'll use the word Zionism. There are left-wing activists, but so these are critiques of, these are humanitarian critiques. You have the same thing coming out of, Democratic Party politicians. Oh, there's just too much killing that Israel is doing. There's a humanitarian crisis. More on Palestine. Let me reduce the size. So, it doesn't let me do it. Oh, now you can't see the writing. Sorry. Yeah, but again, these are all humanitarian. Nothing like you're a research institute, right? Can we have an article on how Judaism is affecting the current genocide? It's just critiques of Israel as violating humanitarianism. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is something here that goes beyond that. Qalam Institute, another one of these organizations, their homepage, I'm sure they have speakers that will talk about the humanitarian aspect. But when you're getting funded with millions of dollars, that's not enough. It just doesn't cut it. Al-Maghrib pretty much defunct at this point, but also nothing on their homepage. Yeah, so am I being fair, or am I just unfair? I'm just a hater. I'm just jealous. I'm a hater, and so I've been blinded from all of the stuff that they're doing for Palestine, and I'm just a hater. No, I didn't say that they're doing nothing for Palestine, but what they're doing is not meeting the need of the hour. And when you claim to be the leader of the Muslim community, when you claim to be at the front of the charge, and you're collecting millions of dollars from the Muslim community, you're not doing what is required. You're not doing what is necessary to actually create a political agenda that will challenge intellectually and politically Zionism and its hold in the Western world. That's what you're not doing. And my suspicion is that you're not doing it because it's politically incorrect. It comes with political backlash, it comes with political consequence, and you will lose the access that you've been enjoying. You can have a lot of access and be a humanitarian and be a pro-Palestinian humanitarian. There's a lot of opportunities that are open for you in academia, even with the media. I mean, those opportunities might get less and less as this Zionist lobby clamps down further and further. But you're not going to get canceled by critiquing the humanitarian disaster in Gaza. You will be canceled if you say that look at what the Talmud is teaching. You will lose your professorship. You will lose your media access. You will lose that cushy position that you have as a chaplain. This is kind of deceptive that you portray yourself to the Muslim community as a champion of the Palestinian cause when you're actually not. You're censoring yourself from saying crucial things that need to be said. You're not even tweeting about it, let alone dedicating some of the millions of dollars that you're vacuuming up from the Muslim community towards a larger project, a larger campaign, a larger think tank effort. Another group, so that you don't think I'm just slamming the Salafis or the post-Salafis, here's Miftah. Miftah, nothing. Yeah. So what's the point? Like, what's the point of these organizations? Like, it should be a situation where it's all hands on deck. There's a genocide taking place of our Muslim brothers and sisters. The entire ummah is under threat, like an existential threat. It's all hands on deck. So even, can you dedicate like 20% or 25% towards that? Like, why aren't all of these compassionate imams, the Dawah mafia, coming together and brainstorming what can we do? How can we put our resources together? Because I'll tell you what the Zionists are doing. The Zionists have started and executed massive media campaigns, massive social media campaigns, massive efforts within academia to counter pro-Palestinian activism and to defend Zionism. They have policy papers. They have entire projects, like just Project Esther, for example, has recently come out. Project Esther. What is Project Esther? From another Zionist think tank. How are we going to use counterterrorism laws and social media censorship to shut down pro-Palestinian activism? And it's a detailed strategy that took effort from researchers to come together, to strategize, to put together this project. And now they're implementing it using their entire network to use. And what they eventually want to do is to use the power of the White House to start prosecuting pro-Palestinian activists as part of a Hamas network. We have to shut down the Hamas network, these Hamas affiliates. Basically, whoever advocates for Palestine and says that Israel shouldn't commit a genocide, these are pro-Hamas activists. We have to use the government and the executive power of the White House to implement laws to shut down these individuals and these organizations. And they're already working, by the way. So that's Project Esther. They have gone and tried to change the tax status, the nonprofit status of organizations. If you are a pro-Palestinian activist and you have an organization that's a nonprofit, they want to disqualify your nonprofit status so that you don't get the tax benefits that you used to get because you're advocating for Palestine. And that's a political cause. It should not be allowed. We can have a nonprofit status and advocate for Zionism in Israel, no problem. But if it's a Palestinian cause that you're advocating for, no, you should not be allowed to have a nonprofit status. So they have all of these strategies, all of these plots that they've developed over the past year. And they are implementing that. And we're just sitting ducks. We're just sitting ducks. We can't even get our imams, the leaders of the community, to tweet about Zionism, let alone Judaism. So I don't know how to wake you guys up. I don't know how to wake you up. And their fanboys just come out and say, no, our beloved imams are doing so much. You have a very low bar. You have a very low standard. And I'm not saying I'm doing so much myself. I'm not trying to say, oh, I'm doing a lot. I'm doing some things. I'm trying to do some things. I'm trying to, for the past year, with the modest means that I have, I've been trying. And alhamdulillah, many of you have supported that, and I appreciate that. Nothing could have happened without Allah and then your support. I need to do more. I need to do much more. But we have to, people are not even recognizing that more needs to be done. you have to recognize the way that Western governments work. Western governments, like, there's just a very simplistic understanding of the Western system. The Western government system is not a matter of, oh, if you want to be political, go and vote for your congressman or your senator or your mayor or your governor or the president, and then there, you've done your duty. Or donate to the political campaign of a particular politician. That's not the way that the government works. The way that the government works is that you have all of these special interests, and you have a conflation or a confluence of academic institutions, think tanks, policy institutes, and media, and lobby groups and political action groups, that they form a network, and they are incestuous. They support each other. They feed off of each other. They fund each other, and they push certain narratives onto the population, and they lobby to get certain laws changed. They lobby to get certain policies in place. It's an entire network. And Muslims have nothing on the table. The understanding that Muslims have is, unfortunately, in the West, is that, okay, on the one hand, we have to go vote for Ilhan Omar or for Sadiq Khan. And someone will say, oh, it's even wajib that you go vote for them. Or we need to have Muslims that go and get an education and get a degree in journalism, or they get a degree in government, and then they go work on Capitol Hill. And they go or they're lawyers, for example. They go work for a law firm. And then suddenly all our problems are going to be solved. This is ignorant. This is naive. The Muslims that are going and getting the journalism degrees, or they're going into law, or they're going and working on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., they're all liberals. They're all liberalized, and they go and work for liberal institutions. And who controls those liberal institutions? Who do you think? So this is not the way it works. You have to have, but the thing is that you give the impression that you're doing something. Oh, we're doing something because we have scholarships for Muslims to go into journalism and for Muslims to go into filmmaking. We need to make films. Yeah, we do need to make films, but if you are a filmmaker who's just a liberal feminist, and you're just going to make a film about like a humanitarian issue, like the humanitarian issue of Palestine, okay, that's something, but that's not going to solve the root cause. That's not going to address the root cause, the kind of activism we need. So it's just frustrating. It's frustrating. Like, you have the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that we're going to be, in the end of times, great in number, but just weak, like foam on the sea. And foam, can't stick together. Like, that's the characteristic of foam. When you have you can have a lot of foam, but you just blow and it just splits apart and it disperses. That's how weak foam is. And that's how Muslims are today. Like, we're very dispersed. We don't stick together. We don't have this wala, this loyalty to each other, and bara, like disassociation with our enemies. So we're weak, like just easily blown around. And of course, the sectarians and the madkhalis are inflaming that situation. They're making us even more divided. So instead of we're not even one mass of foam. We're a bunch of little pockets of foam here and there. Like, that's how pathetic the situation is. What's your aqidah, bro? What's your aqidah? Yeah. Can't help but be frustrated. Okay, let's get to your comments and super chats. Oh, here's another thing, by the way, before I get to the super chats. This is a convention that's coming. Ooh. The mass convention. From inspiration to action. How can I expand this? Well, anyway, you see. From inspiration to action. Oh, yeah. You know, these are, and you have people from CARE, you have like MAS, you have these sheikhas, you have these compassionate imams. Like, what action? What we've had a year to do something, and you haven't had any kind of guidance other than like vote for this person, vote for that person. Like, that's the whole betrayal of the Dawah Mafia and these institutions like MAS, ICNA, ISNA, CARE. All of these groups, their betrayal is that they've conditioned the Muslim community to think that action means who do you vote for and who do you give money, which politician do you give money and support so that they win the next election, and how many hijabis do we have in Congress. You've conditioned the community for years, for the past 10, 20 years, to think that that is the way that we can change the condition of the ummah, is who do you vote for. And in the process, they've liberalized the entire Muslim community, or a vast majority of the Muslim community, and made the Muslim community weaker, more impotent, more victimized, more useless. So even the pious, the pious, righteous Muslims who are in the best position to donate money, to donate time, to donate effort for a larger cause that the ummah as a whole is desperately dying for, instead, those righteous Muslims are dedicating their energy, derailing their energy into supporting like Ilhan Omar and send some Muslim teenagers to go study journalism and work on Capitol Hill. That's your action, like from inspiration to action. These people are frauds. These are frauds. And they want to pretend like they're brave warriors. You're brave warriors, but you can't say what needs to be said, and you can't do what needs to be done. So, anyway, let us look at the super chat. Thank you, BXZ. All Sunni Western occupied countries jail and antagonize any resistant movement, and even change the curriculums to remove certain ahadith and ayat. Yeah, they're jailed and antagonized. Their scholars are jailed, and yeah, it's not even their resistance movements, even if they're anti-Zionist resistance movements. Like, if you have a group in one of these countries, one of these Sunni countries, and this group says, I have no problem with the government. I have no problem with MBS. I have no problem with MBZ. I'm just directing operations to defend Palestine. Those governments will crack down on that group and basically kill that group. So that's why you don't have any of these Sunni groups. Please don't call Islamic Republic as regime. That's what Israel calls them, and it's an insult to our brothers. I don't mean regime in a derogatory way. The country of Iran, basically where my ancestors are from. So I'm not trying to insult them, but I will criticize them if they do something, when they do wrong things. Peter, thank you for your super chat. Why won't Russia or a fellow Muslim country, Pakistan, help Iran with gaining nukes, or do you think they are or will? They are not allowed to legally, otherwise they'll have a lot of negative consequences because it goes against non-proliferation treaties that they are signed on to. But it doesn't matter. Iran has gained those nukes. Whether they got help through backdoor channels, they probably did, but it's irrelevant now. Let's see. Appreciate your super chat. Let's see. Who should Muslims in the U.S. vote for? Again, as I've said, don't vote. Don't vote for anyone. For many reasons. You don't want your name to be on any of these regimes. See, I use the word regime for the U.S. too. You don't want to co-sign anything. I hope, I think that Kamala would be better for Muslims. I think Kamala would be better for Palestinians out of the two options of Trump and Kamala. But don't vote for anyone. Trump, I think, will be the pro-Israel candidate who's going to launch war against Iran, probably through a false flag. But so I really hope that Trump doesn't win, but I think it's probable that he's going to win, unfortunately. Who are the Palestinians? We are Sunni. Yeah, the Palestinians are the pride of Sunnis. Of course, that goes without saying. We're talking about everyone else. Any specific chats on Daniel? I subscribed to the newsletter a few months back and haven't received an email yet. Is it just that you haven't posted anything, or is it an issue on my end? We haven't really posted anything yet. I'm hoping to post things soon. We're still working on it. So yeah, this is why we need funds. We need help to get manpower. One of the leading scholars at Zaytuna came to DFW Masjid last year and gave a fiery talk against Qawm Lut and company, but asked Masjid not to live stream. Yeah, that's nice. That's nice that they're finally talking about this after how long? But, and yeah, don't live stream it though. God forbid anyone else watch it. Just keep it private. Zafia, Jazakallah khair for your generous super chat. Really appreciate it. That's really nice of you. Ameen to your dua. Let's see. Khaled says, what are the solutions to fear? The main solution to fear is knowing that Allah is in complete control and that death is not the end. Death is something that everyone will taste. Every soul tastes death. So when you remind yourself of death and that death is coming for all of us and the dunya is a very insignificant thing, it's a very short time, then we're all going to go into the akhirah. When you constantly are reminding yourself of that, then your fear will lessen and lessen until you have no fear. But if you are so attached to the dunya and you think death is the end of the line and you are really not understanding that ultimately all power is in the hands of Allah and anything that happens is in Allah's control, then you have a lot of fear and you become a coward. Thank you for your super chat, brother Siraj. Mufti of Libya, Sheikh As-Sadiq Al-Qiryani has been pushing the positions you push regarding unity. He is known as the Imam Malik of this generation. Yeah, I've seen the Mufti of Libya have some videos on this issue of allying with Shia, so that's really appreciated. It's smart. I'm glad to see that there are Sunnis who are calling for this and someone in a high position as being a Mufti of Libya. Hamza, appreciate it. Yusuf, appreciate Imam praising a Jewish film producer. What does that tell you? Let's see. Okay, here's something. To be fair, Yasser Qadi stated in August, I'll no longer be monitoring Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or any other outlet, nor will I be posting directly to them. Yeah, but he's been posting stuff. So it's not like he hasn't been posting anything. If he has someone else posting for him, why doesn't someone else post on Zionism for him or his material on Zionism? The thing is, he doesn't have any such material. That's the problem. So, I mean, we can check. Let's check what he has been posting. Yeah, I don't see, like, he's posting stuff constantly. This is from June. So he posts about leading prayers in Masjid al-Aqsa. He posts about his conferences, posts his lectures, Islam in Germany, posts about voting. So, latest lecture, politics, voting is haram. So obviously he says that, no, voting, we all have to vote. It's so important. Yeah, so this is the level, as I mentioned to you, as I characterized it. Posting humanitarian stuff. He's posting all the time. I don't know why you're saying that, oh, he hasn't posted since August. Okay, if there's someone managing his channel, the critique still stands. Thank you. There's something on my forehead. Thank you, Mousey Anon. What ways can we laymen criticize local masjids? Yeah, you can express your disapproval. You can put pressure on the boards. The boards are also run by, you think the boards of these masajid are run by scholars? These boards are run by laymen like you. They happen to have more money than you. So yeah, you can register your disagreement. You can tell others within the community that this is wrong. You need to exercise pressure. Like you can't complain about, oh, we need khilafah, we need our own social media platforms, we need to do something to establish some kind of Islamic governance in the world, but you can't even exert pressure on your local masjid. That's not acceptable. Anyway, any other comments before we switch to the last part of the show? Yeah, sorry guys. I'm just so keyed in on the stream that I'm not even noticing what's on my forehead. So... Everyone's just looking at my forehead. Sorry, distraction. Okay, guys. I was just looking at the normal chat as well. All right, let's go into feminism. Let me just get a nice drink. Okay. Now we will talk about wanting more husbands, more than one husband. And people were wondering what that title was about. Well, we're going to talk about it. So I got an email. Let me get this correct. From a Muslim sister. And she had in this email 15 questions. So let me read the email. I'm at a point in my life right now where I'm truly in need of answers. No one explains the way Daniel does, and if you would please consider making a video responding to all these questions, I'm sure it would help not only me but thousands, if not Muslims, of other women who have had these questions buried in the back of their minds. So these are 15 questions, and I think of all the questions that I've gotten over the years, these are some of the most challenging. Some of the most challenging questions to respond to. But alhamdulillah, we have a response, and these, like the responses, I think can be made into a short booklet that I hope to publish and make available for free for everyone. So that's in the works, along with a million other projects. But we want to talk about it on Haqiqatjou, some of these questions. So let's start. Question 1 on polygamy. So these questions are not in the exact order of the 15 questions that she asked them, but I reorganized them to make it a little bit more coherent based on the answers and the theme of her questions. So a lot of her questions had to do with slavery and concubines. We'll have another episode on slavery and concubines and slave markets. So she's asking about slave markets and the different rules regarding slave markets. So we'll have to have a show dedicated to talking about those questions. Then the rest of her questions had to do with polygyny, multiple wives, and also Jannah, like the reward of men and women in Jannah. So first question, men are allowed to fulfill their lust through multiple wives and concubines in this world and through whores in heaven, but women's jealousy is considered bad in this world and will be removed in the next world. Why is men's lust considered good and women's desire to love only one man considered bad? So she's basically pointing out a seeming double standard. Men have this kind of desire for multiple wives, and that desire is going to be rewarded for those men who are in Jannah with multiple wives and hurs. But women, their desire is just for one man, to just have a man exclusively dedicated to her. But women are not going to have this desire met in Jannah, apparently. So this is a double standard, or this is misogyny, seemingly in Islam against women. It's not fair. And this is her criticism. So how do we respond to this? What is the response that we can give? So let's look at this. So the first point to make is that there are a lot of problematic assumptions that she has built into her question regarding desire, between the desires that men have versus the desires that women have. Men and women do not have, obviously, the same desires, and they don't have the same levels of jealousy. So this is something that is obvious when we look at biology. And an important text that you can reference is from David Buss, The Evolution of Desire, Strategies of Human Mating. This is a biology textbook, actually, by David Buss. And it's about evolution, but we don't accept evolution, but what he's describing is something that's a fact. It's an observable fact in terms of the differences between male sexuality and female sexuality, differences in male mating strategies versus female mating strategies. And we've talked about this in the previous episodes, also in certain debates, that men and women have different mating strategies. And this has to do with differences in biology. Women, by virtue of the fact that they get pregnant and they have to carry a child for 9 months before giving birth, that makes them very weak. That makes them weak, and they can't really protect themselves. They can't really provide for themselves because of pregnancy. It's like a weakness that they have, and that's why they need men. They need a strong man to protect them. That is their reproductive strategy in order to maximize their reproduction as a female. And it's not just for humans, other animals are the same. Females, they are looking for a single strong man to be able to protect them, or male to protect them and provide for them when they're in a state of pregnancy. And they will look for signs of commitment from that man. They will look for signs of that this male is going to stick around for 9 months to provide for me and protect me. And this is why females require men to jump through hoops and to really show that they're committed. And if you ever have tried to get married as a man, you know that not only the woman that you're trying to marry, but also her family wants to make sure that you're serious, that you're going to be committed, that you're going to really provide and protect, and you have to prove that you are man enough for that assignment, for that role. And that's the importance of marriage in the first place, because it's a commitment. It's literally a contract where you commit yourself. If you want to access my daughter and you want to marry her and you want to be with her, you have to be married to her. You have to sign the contract to guarantee that you're going to provide and protect. Obviously, feminism and liberalism has destroyed that contract or that marriage. Now you can get the milk without buying the cow. You can get the cream without buying the cow. You can just sleep with whoever. And that's been a disaster for women. It's been a disaster for men as well. But this is the mating strategy, is to go for a strong man who can provide. This is what's called hypergamy. Men have a different strategy. Men have the strategy to be, in order to maximize their reproduction, to be with multiple women and to have a variety. So men's desire is different. Their sexual desire is different from that of women. So why do women cheat, though? Women cheat for different reason than men cheat. Women cheat on their husbands or their boyfriends or their partners not because they want variety. That's the reason that men cheat. Men cheat because they desire variety. That is their shahwa. Women, they don't cheat for purposes of variety. They are cheating because there's a possibility that there's another man who is going to be a better protector, a better provider. So I want to try to get with this other man who's going to replace my husband. I'm just trying to play the field. I'm trying to see if there's a better option for another man to be monogamous with. So that's different. The women's sexual desire is monogamous amongst many potential men. She just wants to get the best possible men. Whereas men are polygamous. Men are polygamous. They want variety with multiple women at the same time. So it's a different type of sexual desire. And that also affects the jealousy. So men are jealous in a different way than women. Women are less jealous than men are jealous. That's the first point that we have to understand. Men are far more jealous than women are jealous. And this is called ghayra in Islam. The jealousy that women have, though, is a double-edged sword. And this is what the questioner doesn't understand about female desire. Because one of the markers of a man's status, so we said that a woman is attracted to a man who is strong, a man who is tall, a man who is has a high social status, he is good looking, he has a lot of money, he's funny maybe. Like, these are all indicators of a man who is going to be a better companion because he's going to be a better provider, a better protector. Another sign, another indicator that a man is going to be a good provider and protector is what? That he is desired, that other women desire him. And this is an important component of sexual or female sexual desire. And it's kind of a little bit contradictory, because women desire Chad, right? Women desire Chad. They desire the Chad, the Giga Chad figure. But a lot of other women are going to desire the Giga Chad. A lot of other women want to get with Giga Chad. If women did not want to get with Giga Chad, then he wouldn't be Giga Chad. He wouldn't be a Chad. If other women are not interested in him, he's not a Chad. And why would I want, as a woman, to be with a nobody, with a loser, a beta, who's not desired by other women? This is the contradictory nature of women's desire, because at the one hand, they want the man just for themselves. They want Chad just for themselves, but they also would be repulsed if no one else wants Chad. So this is a internal contradiction within female desire. Like I'm saying, as a contradiction, but it's a tension. It's like an internal tension. So women are jealous of men who are going to attract other women and be polygamous, but at the same time, they also desire that. They also desire a man who is wanted by other women. That's very different from male desire. Men will desire a woman just purely on the basis of like physical characteristics. Obviously, we know there's other points of attraction for men, like her personality, her religiosity, maybe even financially, whatever. But in terms of sexual attraction is what we're talking about, it's based mainly on characteristics that she has. Like, for example, her hair, her body shape, the size of certain body parts, right? That's what the man, those are characteristics that she has. Whereas the desire of women, the sexual desire of women, it has that physical component, but there's also a relational component. What is the status of this man, and is he desired by other women? That's a big part of the attraction that a woman has to a man. But it can be a source of jealousy. So the myth is that women prefer monogamy. That's a myth. Because if you, as a woman, truly prefer monogamy, then go and choose a man who is low status, who is weak, who no woman wants. Like, no woman wants this guy because he's low status. Maybe he like has a lazy eye, or maybe like he has a big mole on his forehead. maybe he's just not attractive, so women don't want him. Why don't you go for him? Why are you going for Chad? If you want monogamy so badly, don't go for Chad. Chad is being pursued by all kinds of women all the time. If you truly care so much about having a man who is solely dedicated to you and he has eyes for no one else but you, go find, the beta. Go find Mr. Molehead. Go find Mr. Potato Head. He's going to be dedicated to you. But they don't do that. So isn't this a contradiction in women's behavior? It's only a contradiction if you falsely assume that women prefer monogamy. No, they prefer Chad. They prefer Chad, and they just want Chad all for themselves. That's the difference. So Islam considers the sexual desire and jealousy of both sexes as good or acceptable within certain limits. So Islam limits the sexuality of men. It limits the sexuality of women as well. So men, for example, are limited because you can't engage in fornication. You have to get married, or you have to buy a concubine. So that's costs. You have to pay the mahar. You have to earn money to pay the mahar. You have to pay the nafaqah. You can't just sleep. You can't, get a prostitute. You can't engage in homosexuality. You can't have more than 4 wives. Like, these are all limits on male sexuality. Women also have limits on their sexuality. They can't engage in homosexuality, lesbianism. They can't engage in intercourse during their period. They have to be married to only one husband. These are limits on their sexuality. So men and women have different sexuality, and therefore Islam has different limits that are placed on men and women. If Islam treated men and women exactly the same when they have different desires, that would be unjust. That would be the injustice, but that's not the case. Men and women are different, therefore Islam treats men and women differently. That is just. And then in Jannah, the whole issue of jealousy is something that doesn't really occur because Allah removes that jealousy. And furthermore, there's this hadith that is sahih, and this is found in Sahih Muslim and Sahih Bukhari, I believe. But the Prophet ﷺ says, in paradise, the believer will have a tent made from single hollowed out pearls, 60 miles high or wide, in which the believer will have wives, and he will go around among them, and they will not see one another. They won't see each other. So that's a significant detail. That's a significant detail, that even though the husband has multiple partners or multiple wives in Jannah, the wives are not aware of this. They don't see each other. And so that's significant. So again, to answer the question, this is a myth that women prefer monogamy. Women prefer Chad. They prefer the man who is desired by multiple women. If he were not desired by multiple women, they would not want him. They would not be attracted to him in the same way. A huge component of female attraction is relational, as opposed to male attraction. Male attraction is based on the inherent qualities of a female, whereas female attraction not only depends on the inherent qualities of the male, but also how that male factors into larger society. Is he desired? Does he have high status? What is his position compared to others? That is a huge component of female attraction, and that's going to be catered to in Jannah as well, because why? Her husband is going to be attracted or be desirable to many other females. And the other thing is, she won't be able to see those other females. So this is the answer. Question 2. Jannah men are biologically inclined towards polygamy, while women are biologically inclined towards monogamy. Why does Allah prioritize men's physical aspect in this world and even in paradise where they can have multiple partners, but Allah doesn't give importance by making women monogamous, which would be the ultimate pleasure for women to have only one partner who is solely dedicated to them? So this is another question, but overlaps a lot with what we just answered. So, the question continues. Please don't tell me that I will get whatever I want after going to paradise. I want monogamy. I want one man, and I want that one man to be mine and only mine more than anything else. Will I get that? If Aisha, who was the mother of the believers, cannot have monogamy in heaven, and I'm sure she would love to be the only wife, obviously, given her jealousy, then how can an ordinary girl like me get it? And if not, why was it set up this way for us? Why should our desires be invalidated by this setup? So this is the question. So what do you think? What's the answer? So again, polygamy is the norm. This is another fact that we should mention. Polygamy is the norm for humanity, but societies, 85% of societies in all of world history have been polygamous. But that doesn't mean that the 85% of men have been polygamous. No. Only the elite, so 5 to 15% within any given society, polygamous society, will have multiple partners or multiple wives. The vast majority of men will be monogamous. What we have now, because of feminism, is that this system no longer exists. The thing is that polygamy is the best system for maintaining strong marriages and maintaining strong families. And we've discussed this in debates and in multiple streams. Polygamy is a system that creates the strongest form of family bonds and marriage bonds. Even though if you're coming from a Christian liberal perspective, it seems counterintuitive, but the data all bears this out. We're looking at contemporary polygamous societies versus monogamous societies. Monogamy has led to, which comes from Christianity and the church in Europe, and eventually Protestantism, that leads to feminism. And that eventually leads to the destruction of marriage and family in the West, as what we see, what has happened in Europe, what's happening in the United States, and increasingly what's happening to the rest of the world that adopts this Western monogamous standard. But it's the nations that are polygamous that are the strongest in terms of their marriage and their family. But even within those polygamous societies, it's only the elite. And the thing about the elite men in society, even in the West, where you have the movie stars and you have the celebrities and the politicians who have multiple girlfriends, multiple mistresses, multiple side pieces, the women who are with those men, they know that there are others. They acknowledge, they understand. You know, John F. Kennedy, for example. John F. Kennedy, the president, is famously believed to have been with Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe was the mistress of John F. Kennedy. You think that John F. Kennedy's wife did not know that he has this mistress in Marilyn Monroe? And don't you think Marilyn Monroe knew? Marilyn Monroe knew that John F. Kennedy is married, but she still wanted to get with him. They were still with him. Were they happy with that? Yeah, they're happy. They're happy that they're with John F. Kennedy. That's the thing. They're happy to be with him, and even if that means that, okay, well, I have to share, that's better than being with, you know, a plumber, or being with an electrician, or being with like some loser streamer, right? My preference is to be with Chad. My preference is to be with the elite. And that's the situation in Jannah. In Jannah, the believing men, may Allah make us among them, they will be like kings. They will be in palaces. They will be in a level of wealth and comfort and status above any king that has ever existed. And that's exactly what women desire. That's exactly what women desire. What does the man desire in a partner? He desires certain physical beauty. He desires physical features. That's what men desire. And that's why men don't desire a PhD or a woman who has a doctorate or is a high-powered businesswoman or a lawyer. Men don't care. They care about the physical features, your physical beauty and attractiveness. But for women, it's not like that. They have this relational component to their attraction. They want the Chad, the Giga Chad. That's where they're going to be the most happy. If in Jannah, and in Jannah, your status, your kingly status has to be relational as well. So Allah does cater to women and what they desire, what is going to make them happy in Jannah. If that your husband didn't have other women and didn't have that harem, he would not have the same status. He would not be the same person. He would not be the Giga Chad. So this is, Allah is catering to the desires of women in Jannah. You just haven't understood the complexity and the nuance of women's desires. You have just bought this kind of Western Christian propaganda, this feminist propaganda about what women actually desire. And women's jealousy. That's the source of your problem. So do you believe that people should be given whatever they want in heaven? And this is another point. Like, just because you want something, you think you want it, that doesn't mean that that's what you're going to get. Imagine if you have a desire for bestiality. A person has a desire for bestiality. Does that mean they're going to get bestiality in Jannah? No. What if someone has this homosexual desire? Is there going to be homosexuality in Jannah? No. Allah is not going to cater to every kind of desire that you have, even if you think it's authentic. Your desire for monogamy, this kind of caricature that you've created, that is a corruption. That is a corruption based on the influence of Western Christian Protestantism or Catholicism and liberalism, feminism. It's a corrupt desire. Similarly, desire for necrophilia or bestiality, or I have the desire to be with a chandelier or with a ladder or with a pencil. That desire is not going, Allah is not going to give you what you desire in this dunya if you have a corrupt desire. Allah is going to purify your desire to what is correct, if we are able to attain Jannah. So just as women on earth are extremely happy to be in polygamous relationships with kings and high status men and presidents, similarly, women in Jannah will be extremely happy to be with men, to be with their husbands in Jannah who are also polygamous. So that's the answer. If women desire to have male whores in paradise, like how men are promised female whores, will they get that? Please don't say it's natural, because there are many women who would love to have multiple husbands, although this isn't my desire. Are there many women who would love to have multiple husbands? I don't think that that's the case. But even if it were the case, that's a corrupt desire to have. Just like a desire for bestiality or necrophilia. So Allah is not going to cater to corruption and deviance in Jannah. Allah is good and Allah is pure, and He will establish in Jannah what is good and what is pure. Allah will correct desires. And the other thing that women should understand is, in Jannah, your husband is not going to only be a king. He's also going to be physically strong. So this is a hadith in Sahih Tirmidhi, or Sunan Tirmidhi. The believer in paradise will be given such and such strength for intercourse. He'll be given the strength of 100 men. Giga Chad. That is the husband that is promised to the believing women. So this is how we address these kinds of questions and correct people's understanding. The main source of the problem is adopting feminist assumptions about female desire and misunderstanding what female desire actually is, because feminism gaslights women. Feminism misleads women into thinking falsehoods. And that is what creates problems in understanding deen and understanding Islamic theology. So we have to correct those assumptions based on facts. So these are the impossible questions, some of them. Those are 3. You see there's some overlap, but there's 12 more other questions, some of them related to polygamy, some of them related to Jannah. And inshallah, we're going to continue to address these and eventually have a booklet where you can read a full-fledged answer if you prefer that as opposed to video. Okay, so alhamdulillah, that's our show. It's kind of a long show, but I always enjoy speaking with you. Let me look at the super chats again. See if there's anything to address. I can't get to all of your super chats. If I don't get to it, I apologize. But some of the super chats, you get into like tangents that I don't want to get into. Hamad, wayakum for your super chat. Appreciate it. Elon is working on a brand new bot that could carry your baby for 9 full months. What do you think that the consequences will be? Yeah, I've written about the idea of sex robots. If sex robots are invented, then women are going to be in big trouble. They're going to be obsolete. Women are basically going to feel what men have felt for the past 100 years because technology has made men obsolete. You can get the protection that you need as a woman from the police. You can get the protection that you need using technological means. You can get artificial insemination, so you don't even need a man to have a child. You don't need a man to provide for you because you have a massive welfare state that's going to provide your income. So women have been able to live perfectly fine without the companionship of men, without having to marry men. You also, for that emotional attachment that you need from a male partner, you get that from antidepressants, or you can like get pets, cats. Like, so men have been made obsolete by technology for 100 years, but men haven't gotten the same benefit because the level of technology that's required to replace women is much higher level of technology. But sex robots, if they're invented, then women will become obsolete in the same way that men have been made obsolete by technology. And then we're going to see a lot of protests from women. A lot of anger and protests from women because they won't have the leverage that they used to have. Women could leverage their sexuality to control men. But if you can get that through a robot, then women lose their leverage. Or if you can get that through prostitution, you lose a lot of leverage. But this is why the biggest opponents of prostitution to make prostitution illegal in the West have been feminists. They want a monopoly. But the technology, the sex robot can break that technology. Basically, you have a companion AI who will provide for you emotionally and can provide an artificial womb so you have children and that sexual intimacy that you desire. Then why do I need a woman? Why do I need a human woman? I can get technology satisfies me. Okay. Appreciate your super chat, brother Yahya or Yahia. May I talk to you live about Palestine? No, unfortunately, we don't have a live participation for the show at this point. She won't know who's the father if she has 4 husbands. Yes, that is correct. Okay, guys. Let's see. Want to end the show, but one last look at the chat. Interesting comment from Mufti Cheesecake. When famous husbands cheat or are polygamous and their wife stays, her status usually increases. For example, Kobe Bryant's wife, Hillary Clinton, Beyonce. Whereas the opposite is true when a wife cheats, like Will Smith. Like Will Smith's wife. Yeah, that's an interesting observation. It's absolutely true. We have a joke about Tunisians back in our home. Either you're fasting or you're Tunisian. I don't get that joke or that saying. Episode 30. Thank you, Adam. Yeah, who knew we could make it so far? 30 episodes without getting canceled. It's an achievement, alhamdulillah. Thank you, Brother Andros. You should make a video on jihad guidelines regardless when war is allowed, POWs, etc. Yeah, we have some content already on jihad in the channel. So if you want something more detailed than that, not sure how useful that would be, but here's an easy comment. Thoughts on Ahmadiyya? They're non-Muslims. They're the ones who believe in a prophet after the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, the British agent. So that's not Islam. Okay. Okay, so inshallah, we're going to have a debate upcoming. It's going to be 2 versus 1, most likely going to happen on November 9th. So in a couple of weeks, I have to prepare for that debate. But the topic is, are the Shia Muslim or are they kuffar? The Shia. I'm going to be debating that the Shia today are Muslims. They're deviants, but they're Muslims. And then I'm debating 2 guys, 2 sectarians, who are going to argue that no, the Shia are kuffar and we cannot ally with them. We cannot ally with Iran. So it's going to be 1 versus 2. And that's going to be in November 9th, inshallah. It's going to be on this channel, but you can also, if you don't want to watch it here, you can go and watch it on Modern Day Debate. James of Modern Day Debate is going to be the moderator. And he's being really nice to moderate this debate because the debate is not really something so relevant to a non-Muslim audience. But it's more like an internal Muslim debate, but he's still willing to host it and moderate it. So show your appreciation to Modern Day Debate by subscribing. But that's coming, inshallah, November 9th. And it's going to be interesting because this is the first time I'm going to do 1 versus 2 people. But it's going to be fun, inshallah. It's going to be fun and funny. But I have to prepare for that. So we might not have as many Haqiqat shows up until that point. I'll try. But I'm also traveling because I need to take care of some family issues. But yeah, I'll still be online. I might do Twitter Spaces in lieu or instead of a Haqiqat show next week. We'll see. But and there'll be clips of this show, I'm sure. But I want you to reflect. Like, the takeaway of this show is Sunni leadership. How can we get Sunni leadership that is going to be brave enough to address the biggest issues, political issues of our time in a systematic way, in an organized way, so that we can develop big networks that are going to move the needle on these major problems that we have that are causing an existential threat to the ummah. And right now, for the past year, our brothers and sisters in Palestine have faced the brunt of this. And I don't know about you, but it's hard to live like this. It's hard to live like this, and our brothers and sisters are being massacred. It's difficult. It's constant psychological pain and depression. So we have to come up with a solution. And it's been a year. Like, isn't it time to make moves, to wake up? But unfortunately, we have people who want us to be stuck in the same kind of pattern that we've been in for years. They haven't moved on. They haven't progressed. They haven't woken up. Even a genocide of Palestinians is not enough to wake them up. So it's a scandal as far as I'm concerned. Inshallah, I'm trying to do as much as possible within my limited power to change things, at least for the next generation. You can join me. You can help. You can support this channel. You can talk to people. You can collaborate. You can cooperate. You can work together for something tangible. But the first thing you have to do is change what's in yourself. Change what's in yourself from this cowardly, fearful person to someone who only fears Allah, who only fears Allah's judgment. Change yourself. Stop using these ego defense mechanisms to justify your apathy, your inactivity, your cowardliness. It's not hikmah. It's not hikmah. It's not wisdom. It's not pragmatism. It's cowardice. No more excuses for yourself. I'm telling myself this as much as I'm telling you. There are so many things that we can do legally within this country, in the West, legally, that we can do. We can put our heads together and operate, form think tanks, form action groups, form networks, use social media, use media, put pressure, think strategically. We can, that's within our power. It's all legal. But there's no activity towards that. Virtually none. We're the exception, alhamdulillah. MuslimSkeptic is the exception. Look at our site. Look at MuslimSkeptic.com. Look at this. Look at Haqiqat show. Look at what we're covering. Look at what we're producing. So join us, support us in whatever way you can, and may it be heavy in your scales. Barakallahu feekum. Inshallah, we'll catch you on the next episode of Haqiqat Show. Until next time, catch us on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Rumble. Make sure to subscribe to the newsletter. The link is in the description below. And we haven't sent any emails yet, but we're going to start sending things soon, inshallah. And we'll catch you on the next Haqiqat show, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.